Hello adventurers, and welcome back to the tavern. Today we will be discussing how to be a game master and some of the most common pitfalls to avoid when getting started. When I first started playing TTRPGs, that's tabletop role-playing games to the uninitiated, 5th edition was the hottest new thing, and me and my friends grabbed the books, some dry erase, some dice, and dove headfirst into playing. We of course got so many rules wrong that it's funny to look back now with all that I know, but it didn't matter to us then. We still met every Sunday for brunch and games, knowing that the next session would have fun and antics just around the corner. It can be daunting to start playing, and unless you have a friendly neighborhood tavern keeper to show you the ropes, it can feel insurmountable. Today, I will be your guide on how to think about and start preparing for running your first TTRPG. So without any further ado, let's get into today's topic. I know that it can be difficult to invite people to your newly forming table, but not only is it okay for you to get some rules wrong, I would argue as the game master, you make the rules. You could easily run a game with nothing but your imagination, making up the rules as you go. The rules are only there to facilitate the real experience, collaborative storytelling. You and your friends are there to have a good time, and the story is the vessel by which that is going to happen. Epic settings, complicated and lovable heroes, dastardly villains, and of course, a cozy tavern. If you are really concerned about learning the rules to a TTRPG before your first session, fear not, I have some recommendations. First off, I would say finding anything that's available to you to read in full and completely understanding it is going to be invaluable. Take Dungeons & Dragons as an example. Reading the Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide didn't even occur to me until I had been GMing for a while. And when I did, there was some really great information and resources sitting right there on my shelf. Second, I would recommend a more rules-light game and experience. Kids on Bikes is a great system, and even has some free one-shots available from various free RPG days. Third, if you are jumping into a new TTRPG, I would strongly advise using official content instead of trying to homebrew the entire thing. Ask me how I know that this is a mistake. Many, if not all, TTRPGs offer some kind of official campaign book or setting. Dungeons & Dragons, of course, famously has dozens of these available, from classic vampires in Curse of Strahd to Fey shenanigans in The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Further to that, there are so many third-party creators that pour so much passion into the space, many of which make settings or modules that are game system neutral, meaning that they can be adapted to most TTRPGs out there. I cannot recommend enough using independent creators for your TTRPG adventures. They work very hard and many offer free options simply for the love of the genre. That brings me to the next point. Many first-time GMs will take on a lot and quickly become too overwhelmed. The first game I ever ran, I entirely homebrewed. I made the town, the quests, the monsters. It took me close to a month, and I still made so many mistakes. The amount of stress I put on myself was too much, and until we actually sat down to play, I was constantly worried that I had done enough to prepare. That's when I learned that it wasn't about the amount of prep or how detailed the menu at the local tavern was, despite it being really cool and my favorite part of that first game that we played. It was about telling the story together. You can get the thrill of the game playing an RPG that can be written on a single page, just as much as playing a rules-heavy, entirely homebrew setting. Now, am I saying those types of things don't help? Of course not. I'm the type of GM that has made a homebrew world multiple times, but that isn't required. All of this is to say that if you have interest in a campaign module, jump in. What I would like to do now is highlight some tools that are available to an aspiring GM if you're still feeling concerned about being prepared. First, there's a lot of content from both the big companies and independent creators that help you add substance to your world, without you having to think of hundreds of place names and random townsfolk. I will highlight one of my favorites here, but keep in mind there is also free content, as well as perhaps more comprehensive lists that exist out there. I use a book called Roll and Play often, and it's a great resource for both when I'm doing prep, as well as when my players decide to interview the entire town and I need to think of 5 dozen NPC names. The book is written by Sam Bartlett and the team at Roll and Play Press, and is stuffed full of dozens of lists from NPC names all the way to random encounters. I personally play a lot online, and I find having something that's not taking up more screen space while I'm trying to play is very helpful. This is of course a paid product, but there are plenty of examples of free versions of similar things. This may age me a little bit, but one of my favorite places to find interesting little tools like this is Pinterest. I have an entire board of random weather effects, damage tables, and more. Next, there are so many great creators in this space that are offering a lot of their content via YouTube. Some channel recommendations that I would make are Ginny D, Pointy Hat, D&D Shorts, and of course, while not in the same league, I would be remiss to not recommend myself as well. I hope to cover a lot more of the ins and outs of actually running games, telling stories, so if that's something that interests you, feel free to hit the like and subscribe buttons and comment below. It really helps us out. Lastly, the greatest resource that you have at your hands are your players. I know, players doing work, but hear me out. If your friends are coming to your tavern for a free drink every night, the least they can do is help clean up. While of course character creation is an essential and necessary part of the game, I like to take it a step further by having my players participate in what's called a Session Zero. This of course is sort of dipping your toes into what the game might be like before actually sitting down and rolling dice. It's a time and space for your players to sit down with you and make characters. That way, one of them doesn't make an evil manipulator bard in a party of all lawful good paladins. While that may sound like a fun idea, in practice it may cause some friction at the table. I would actually like to highlight a new system that I've been using from the recently launched TTRPG at Darrington Press and Critical Role, Daggerheart. A complaint that I've heard, specifically about D&D, is that when you sit down to create characters, the game is very rules first, and characters and backstory take a backseat. Even the backgrounds are mechanically driven instead of matching what type of character the player might want to make. That's where Daggerheart shines during character creation. First, when you choose your class, included in there are a bunch of backstory questions. This can help add substance to where your character was before and how something like being a sorcerer has affected them personally. What I really enjoyed, and what my players seem to enjoy as well, is the section right after that called Connections. These are a series of questions that you ask one another at the table as party members, and they're meant to facilitate a connection to some of your party members before the game starts. This adds even more to each one of your player characters, and is a goldmine for GMs looking for plot hooks for their next story. If this isn't exactly your cup of tea, I think you could draw inspiration from this to have your own questions or requirements before players sit down at your table. I cannot stress enough how much I think this is the key cornerstone to most TTRPGs. If you are looking for feedback and a better understanding of your game, ask your players. There is a lot of information that you can glean, even just by discussing with one of your players. Usually my strategy to starting out a new game is to ask my players what they are expecting from the story, and then tailor it to fit them. My rule of thumb is that the setting can be almost anything, but the players are the ones that make the story. An example from my long-form campaign that just ended recently was that I had many plot points that I had made and drawn out before the game had started that we just never ended up getting to because a small thriller subplot in a town that my players never went to just really isn't going to matter. My players are here for the main plot, and they chewed through it a lot faster than I expected to. So I stopped putting a lot of stock into, say, a guild with a bunch of side quests that detract from that epic main cinematic story. And this isn't going to say that all groups are going to be like this. That's just my group, and this campaign. I cannot stress enough how much your players are a resource that I see so many GMs neglecting to use. Talk to your players. That brings us to the final section of this video, and the culmination of all other points covered. That is that you are the reason that your players want to play. They're all going to do this together, but you brought them to the table. You are the tavern keeper, and they your patrons. But you'll tell the story together. Trust yourself and write the version of the game that you have in your mind. Whether you particularly like sci-fi train heists or noir mystery, you are the guide to your players and ultimately what the rules are. So trust yourself and let us trust you. If you've come this far and are still looking for help, please consider subscribing for more videos about storytelling, world building, and TTRPGs. I've been your tavern keeper, and I hope to see you back here in the tavern soon. Stay safe, adventurers.